Hey everybody, welcome to today's research-informed defensive lesson here at Active Self-Protection. Every single day of the year, we post a real-life use of force incident caught on camera so that your training and your practice can be more research-informed. I'm your daily host, John Correa.
And I'm your co-host today, Neil Widener.
MagTech is the only freedom seed I use on the range. I personally have over 100,000 rounds downrange of MagTech, and it's unbelievably reliable, very accurate, and a great value. Pick some up for your next range trip wherever you shop for range supplies.
First one here out of Houston. You see this woman walking in, apparently a personal beef with the employee who says she was hitting on her husband. Let's listen in.
Tú le enseñaste el ombligo y las chichis.
¿Estás segura que es en esta
Sí, aquí es, aquí es.
Puede llamarle para que venga.
Sí, es aquí en esta tienda.
No, trabajamos dos personas. ¿Cuándo fue?
Sí, tú le enseñaste el ombligo. Sí, cierto.
No.
Tu puta madre. Bandera.
She stole a phone charger on her way out and turned this from an assault into a robbery. Second one's from a Costco, but I'm not sure which one. Let's listen in.
Oh!
Because I don't know which Costco this one's from, I tried to Google foo it, but I couldn't figure it out. I don't know what the end result of this was. I'm sure people were calling the cops on this woman, and I'm sure that there was an arrest made, but again, I don't have a news story. So if you do, let me know in the comments. So Neil, tell folks some of the exclusives that are only in the Active Self-Protection Unlimited app.
Oh man, there's a ton of stuff there. The React Ripple is my favorite because that's my show.
That's basically John Reed's mean tweets.
Yeah, so that one's a really fun one because you don't have any prep of what we're going to talk about, and then you have to respond to comments. It's a pretty fun one. But we also have the first watches. We've got a few lessons, like today's lessons, that are exclusive. They're a little too hot for YouTube, so we don't put them here, but we put them over there, so there's that kind of stuff. And
we also do the monthly online seminars.
The online seminar, and then the real big one is all of the online classes. I think we're up to 19 classes, full-length firearms classes that are there from Tim Herron, those kind of folks, the high-end guys, Riley Bowman, of course our classes on there as well, and there's a ton of stuff over there. So I'd say there's probably 200 pieces of content there that are app exclusive that you can't get anywhere else.
Neil, first one here, a personal beef. Okay, you're hitting on my husband when he came in the store, and my Spanish isn't good enough, but I did hear chichis, so obviously there's some personal stuff here that there was some challenges. But when did we lose civility that rather than I'm going to come in here and assault you for this, that I'm going to deal with my husband, who I feel like maybe has been part of the flirting train here?
That's the scary thing about all this is I don't speak much Spanish really at all, but I get from context what's going on here. And the body language it says that somebody's pretty angry, but typically it takes two to tango. And so you might have your anger going in the wrong direction here.
You might. And also, again, if somebody comes in angry like this, I was in retail management for like 9 years, okay? So I know what this world is. Distance is your very best friend here, and when you let them collapse the distance, remember, distance buys you time buys you options. Okay, ma'am, can I have you step around the counter, please, for me? I'm gonna back up a few steps. Okay, ma'am, that's close enough. I'm sure you're upset. Let's talk about that. And trying your de-escalation, your escape and evasion, your de-escalation skills, very, very useful in this particular case, though, of course, they're gonna get a vote. And I wish that maybe the store was arranged a little differently, that maybe there's not an opportunity for her to get behind the counter, but that's not just always going to be within your control. Now, what you're going to see here is then this woman is then going to throw something at her, and I'm not sure what that is, but I got to tell you, Neil, that as soon as she threw something at me right there, as this argument gets going, that's when I am going to palm my OC spray and get it kind of staged in my hand. And the second she starts throwing things at me, I'm going to bless this woman with the hot sauce.
Yeah, I think that as she's coming around the corner in that aggressive manner, having the palm in your hand already is not a bad idea. It doesn't, just because it's in your hand doesn't mean that you are going to use it, and it's a small enough unit that she's probably not going to see it. But the second that she lets go of whatever it is she threw at her, and I can't really tell what it is, if it's a pen or a piece of gum or whatever, but you've already got her yelling, you've already got her acting aggressive, you've already got her calling you names, and she stepped into kind of your personal space. Dousing her with some OC would have been a completely justified and reasonable response.
Now, of course, I'm sure that in a large chain store like this, they're going to have policies and might cost you your job, but I don't care about that stuff. At the end of things, you can go find a new job. And also remember, you poke somebody in the eye with the OC spray, even if they choose to attack you at that point, you're in no worse spot than you were before you doused them with the OC spray, because they are a threat of physical harm to you. So if they continue that physical threat, all right, fine. Now, once the attack starts, Neil, I think sometimes I don't want anybody to get the wrong assumption that I think that OC spray is the answer to all physical assaults. Because once she starts putting hands on you like this, you're not going to be able to OC spray her. I know Claude Werner talks about sticking it up their nose or stuff like that, but I think that the better answer here is, at this point, the time for OC spray is over, and you better have some empty-handed skills and have some Jack Johnson and Tom O'Leary available to protect yourself.
Yeah, I think you're engaged already, and now you've got hands on each other. So, I wouldn't say absolutely no to the OC, but the OC is going to get significantly harder to get it to the right place. And if they've got hands on you, now it's not you OCing them, it's you OCing us, because you're going to get contaminated in that too. And if they don't let go, now you're fighting with somebody and you're both blind, and that's not a good idea either. So I lean more your direction on that one, John, in that drop the OC, and if they're going to go hands on, then move forward, use the weight of your body to get them pushed out of the store, and use leverage now to break contact, but make them break contact. She didn't really look like she wanted to fight. She wanted to slap and go, but you don't know that for sure. You don't know that she's not going to pull a knife out of her pocket or something along those lines. And so you can't pull a gun. This isn't the time for a gun because you don't know, but using your body weight and leverage to get them moved out and moving in a different direction can create some distance as well, because then you can just push your arms out as they're moving, and now you've got some space to make some decisions.
Yeah, and did you notice there, she changed it at the very end from an assault, which likely would be a misdemeanor, into a robbery, which is now we got a strong arm robbery, which is a felony, right? Because it wasn't just stealing. She used force to steal and used threat and intimidation and force to steal. That's a robbery, friends. So let's escalate you getting, flirty with my significant with my boo into a felony offense. Of course, the very fact that maybe she's coming and assaulting somebody like that means that she's not really thinking through the consequences of things. But recognize here, some empty-handed skills, a very helpful tool, and also a good OC spray could have definitely kept her from doing that, and would have been, at the time that we said it was, 100% justified, and would have maybe kept this assault from happening. Now, let's think about this Costco one, and I really want to go back to this idea again, Neil, of civility. But I want to key in on something here. Why is, we don't get to see when this starts, this employee, the man, the bald-headed guy, has his hands on this woman. So you go, aha, he started it. That's not true. You don't know what happened before they started filming. And chances are this conflict had already escalated quite a bit before any filming was done. And so sometimes we look at video evidence, Neil, and we go, aha, it shows us the whole story. In all these kinds of cases, it certainly does not, because it does not show us what precipitated what we see on the camera.
It shows us what happened in less cases than it does, in most of these, just simply because we don't know why somebody pulled their phone out and started recording. Because I don't walk through Costco with my phone out recording everybody, just waiting for something to happen, and neither does anybody else. There's probably somebody that does. I get it, but we don't know what started this. And him having his hands on her, to me, is at least a clue that she was already getting aggressive. She was probably already threatening to some degree. Now, Costco probably has security camera footage that would answer those questions for us. We just don't have access to that. But yeah, going back to civility, John, my goodness, what happened to us that we feel like we can just say anything we want to everybody out there with zero consequences, and then lay hands on them is wildly inappropriate.
Yeah, and I really think, again, we got to go back to the place where adults use words. Okay, and I get it, man. You might be really mad at a return policy. This looks like the return desk, or maybe. And listen, you might be mad about something, but that employee is just doing their job. Maybe escalate it a level, go up a level above that, call the corporate office, Okay, ma'am, what was your name? Maybe this woman here behind the counter is the manager. All right, what's your name? Cool. I'm going to make a call to the corporate office because I disagree with that. And if you feel like you can't help me, fine. But that's what an adult does. They regulate their own emotions. And clearly this woman is not regulating her own emotions. And you see here, she pulls back and then pulls back a hand to slap this male employee who had, kind of restrained her with his hands. Again, a perfect spot for an OC spray here. You raise your hand at me like that. Your best case scenario, you raise your hand at me like that, is that you are going to eat a face full of OC because you absolutely deserve the hot sauce. If he doesn't have one of those because it's against corporate policy or something, again, you raise your hand at me like that, and you're going to eat a knuckle sandwich for that because I'm not going to let myself be assaulted.
Well, that's the thing, John. I mean, how far do we have to let things go? And now clearly we can label this lady a Karen if we want. But on the other side of this, whoever's on the other side of that counter at Costco clearly doesn't appear to be trying to de-escalate this, doesn't appear to be showing any empathy. And I've been in some of these conversations where you get the quote unquote manager or whatever that then just wants to ticky-tack and argue with this. And so it's a two-way street on these, if you ask me, that both sides could have done a whole lot to de-escalate. Clearly raising hands on somebody is in my opinion, the worst of the offenses here. So doing that is just silly. And her backing up, putting her hand up like that, yeah, she's getting some OC, or she's getting taken to the ground or whatever the case may be. But she doesn't get to threaten others and threaten the safety of other people just because she's angry at some sort of corporate policy.
Yeah, and I also want to note here, again, from the employee's side, you notice they are crowding her. They are staying inside their own reactionary gaps and putting themselves at risk by doing so, all right? So again, distance is your friend. That countertop, that computer between you is your friend. Now, she may be saying incredibly mean, nasty, hurtful things to you. And then, ma'am, I'm gonna ask you to leave my store. Ma'am, I ask you to leave my store. And again, maintaining separation, maintaining that reactionary gap, I think is very important. And that's a de-escalation strategy because when I compress the distance, I compress the time, I increase the emotional severity of what's going on, and I give her opportunities to attack me when I don't have to give opportunities to attack me. Now, again, I'm kind of taking the employee's side here. I think that this lady, is the one who's really at fault. But putting myself at risk there, I think is bad from a tactical perspective.
It really is. And I think of the whole Patrick Swayze thing about be nice till it's time not to be nice. That does hold water, except for in this case, the employee decided to step out from behind the counter and close that distance and impose their will is how I read the situation. And like you say, if the employee stays back and says, listen, it's time for you to go, we can here's a phone number you can call, here's somebody else you can talk to, but I'm not engaging in this. Again, I think the employees made a tactical error in closing that distance and closing in around somebody that was already very agitated and angry. And again, I'm with you. I side with the employees, and yet I wonder why couldn't have the employees done something to stay where they were? Why couldn't have they de-escalated? Why couldn't have they, whatever the issue is, why not let's try to find a solution? Maybe we can't do that, but here's what we can do. Give some solutions to help somebody out rather than the hard and fast no that's clearly got them agitated. So again, I wouldn't call it 50-50, but the employees are not clean in all of this, if you ask me.
Now, of course, the woman has what we just watched on camera, slapped the employee across the face. Is that designed to injure? Now, maybe I can say that the knee to the quad was designed to hurt someone, but the slap across the face is 100% a social cue. That is 100%, I am punishing you for not doing what I want you to do. And quite frankly, that level of social offense tells me this woman is completely kind of lost her ability to self-regulate. Again, self-regulation. If this is you, or if you know somebody like this, get to therapy for God's sake. Figure out how to identify your emotions and control yourself. Because you get out of control like this with an employee in a store, now this is assault. You're gonna go and stand before a judge and have a conviction on your record for assault when you do stupid stuff like this. And this level of lack of control, Neil, I think is kind of endemic, and we're seeing it more and more. And This is why I continue to beat the drum that people need to go to therapy.
Man, they really do, and we see it over and over and over again in these kind of scenarios where we can't regulate. So we go back to some sort of physical force or physical violence, and choosing violence is almost never the right answer when you're the first person to choose. Now, choosing violence to deal with violence, where we see them circle up and get a hold of her and take her to the ground, that's completely acceptable. And again, this is I side with the employees, but I think they could have done a whole lot of stuff different. But this lady just continued to escalate and continued to escalate. And it goes back to some of the de-escalation training we've had. Not everyone can be de-escalated because they get a vote. And so the only way to de-escalate somebody in this case is to give her exactly what she wants. And even that won't be good enough because she's already too agitated. So I just think that this lady clearly needs some therapy, and everybody else probably needs some training.
Yeah, and now listen, there's a bunch of non-employees here, of just customers kind of hanging out here too. And at some point, you saw that guy in the black hat. Like when she slapped that lady, he decides, nope, I'm getting involved at this point, grabs a hold of her and throws her to the ground. I think that's 100% justified. I think here, wait a minute, in defense of third party, I'm 100% allowed to use ordinary force to stop a threat of ordinary force. This woman clearly is a threat of ordinary force. But I do think, Neil, it's worth thinking about the fact that, Costco is not going to throw a blanket of legal protection over me here. And so when I step into these kind of third-party encounters, I have to accept the liability myself. Now, you may feel, again, this man in the hat may feel, it's my responsibility to protect the women that I see in our society. Maybe that's your moral code. Okay, I'm totally down with that. But recognize that you're on your own doing that. And so it does come with a significant amount of risk.
It really does. Now, the other angle that I'll have you consider here, John, is that guy in the black hat stood there and watched the whole thing. There is the chance that he is with her because right now, as he's pulling her back behind him, where it looks like she's falling to the ground, his eyes are not on her. His eyes are on the rest of them. I'm not 100% convinced that he's not stepping in between them to defend her, which she doesn't need defending here. She is the egregious party here. She is the one making all of the really bad decisions, and she's the one that escalated that thing. But all of everything that you just said stands true. Even if you're stepping in to defend her, or you're stepping in to try to stop that, Costco isn't going to cover you legally. Costco isn't going to pay for your lawyer. Costco isn't going to be standing beside you in court. All of that stuff you're going to answer for your own. So these are decisions you've got to make. And I think there's ways, if you want to step in there and to stop something like that, just stepping in between people, if that's who you are, that takes a special kind of person, because you're very likely to get punched in the face yourself. But maintaining that civility of yourself and the stillness of your own soul and heart, so that you can step in and say, hey, enough, everybody, let's stop. Breaking up a fight isn't necessarily as easy as it looks on TV or in the movies. Breaking up a real fight is a bit of a challenge, and you're probably going to get punched too.
You really run those risks, right? So you better have the skill set to back up the mindset. That's important. So I think both of these incidents today, they really highlight de-escalation skills, managing your distance as best you can, having a tool like an OC spray, because a gun would not be a useful tool here, and having a cool head, and I think, again, some emotional fitness.